My name is Amanda Damon, and I'm a Homeworks by Precept consultant here in Augusta, Maine. Today, we're going to take a look inside the book at Science 5, 5th edition. In your textbook kit, you will receive your two-part teacher's edition, your student textbook, your student activity manual, your activity manual answer key, your assessments and assessments answer key, and lastly, you will receive a teacher edition companion. In Science 5, your student will be learning physical, life, and earth sciences. This will help them to build a strong foundation for their later years. They will have many hands-on activities and also be able to see science at work in the real world by taking a look at some different careers in the various fields of science. First, we're going to take a look inside of your Teacher's Edition. When you open your Part 1 of your Teacher's Edition, we have our table of contents. We have some notes for the instructor, and then we'll get into our different chapters. We have Physical Science for Unit 1, Life Science in Unit 2, Earth and Space Science for Unit 3, and you'll notice for Part 2, this is grayed out. These are the chapters that will be covered in Part 2 of your Teacher's Edition. Your Teacher's Edition also includes a glossary, instructional aids, materials list, and more in the back. Take a few moments to look over the Using Your Teacher Edition pages. This will give you some guidance on what is new in this edition, as well as some different tools and resources available to you. Here we have an explanation of the teaching cycle for this Science 5 course. This happens in 4 stages. We have engage, instruct, apply, and assess. You will see later on when we take a look at one of the lessons how these 4 stages are laid out. At the beginning of each chapter, you will have a lesson plan overview for the entire chapter. This will list the pages for your student text, the objectives for the lesson, any resources and materials you or your student may need, and then any assessments. Let's take a look at Lesson 70. At the top of our page, we have the student edition pages and the activity pages listed that they will need. Next, we have our objectives for the lesson, the biblical worldview shaping, any printed resources that will be needed, and digital resources. Next, we have our first stage of teaching, which is the engage stage. You will be playing a link to the Virginia Weather Report to observe a meteorologist giving a weather forecast. Next, we have our instruct stage. You will notice that there are questions with text underneath in red. These are discussion questions for your student with answers in red. In your Teacher's Edition, you will also notice that you have a smaller view of your student's textbook page as well. As we continue to look at the instruct stage, we see there will be discussions on weather forecasting, making predictions, reading weather maps, and future weather. As we continue, we have a discussion about weather balloons and limitations of science. As we continue, at the end of this lesson, we have a STEM career page, which takes a look at science out in the real world through the career of an atmospheric scientist. At the bottom of this page, you can see that your student text will have some questions. The answers to those questions can be found on the left in red. As you continue teaching, you will come to the apply stage. Here, your students will be completing the after reading portion of the anticipation guide. This was a material that was listed under the printed resources at the beginning of the lesson. Next, they will have their study guide, pages that they will do in their activity manual. And here we have assess. In this lesson, your students will have a quiz. In the back of your Teacher's Edition, you have a glossary of terms, You also have a list of instructional aids that will be needed, along with the chapter and section number. You also can find these instructional aids on the Homeschool Hub. Following the instructional aids, we have a few more resources, including a materials list for chapters 1 through 8. Chapter 9 through 15 you will find in Part 2 of your Teacher's Edition. For each chapter, you will have a list of activities and the materials needed for each one. Here in Chapter 3, one of the explorations is an owl pellet dissection. You will need a table covering, gloves, an owl pellet, wooden stick, tweezers, paper plate, hand lens, index cards, and glue. If you have not already done so, I would highly suggest checking out the Logos Science 5 5th edition science kit that is specifically made to go with this course. This will have almost all of the materials that you will need for your hands-on activities, and it just really helps so you're not having to search and try to find things here and there. Having everything in one box makes things really easy. In Part 2 of the Teacher's Edition, we are covering Earth and Space Science and Life Science. Also, as in Part 1, we have a glossary, instructional aids, materials list, and more. At the beginning of each unit, you will have a unit introduction page. This will give you and your student an overview of what's to come. And again, we have discussion questions for your students, along with answers in red. Let's take a look at the beginning of Chapter 11. Because this is the beginning of a chapter, we have chapter objectives listed. And then we also have the specific lesson objectives, along with the biblical worldview, printed resources needed, digital resources. These are found on the Homeschool Hub, as well as any materials. Take note of the preparation that is listed. You may choose to do some or all of these based on your needs. For the chapter introduction, here under Engage, we have a video called The Stars to show your students. This video can be found in the Homeschool Hub along with any other digital resources. Next, we have a discussion of the chapter photo that your students can find in their book. We have continuing discussion on the stars and creation. You'll also notice we have a light gray box at the top titled Early Astronomers. This is some additional information you can choose to share with your student. Next, under Instruct, we have a vocabulary game, as well as writing the answer to the essential question for the chapter. Continuing on, your student will do some silent reading, and then we have some more discussion going over what they have read. You will also notice down at the bottom we have a differentiated instruction box. These boxes provide different activities for remediation and technology options or enrichment for your particular group of students. For this, we have a technology option, a link to show a video to distinguish apparent magnitude and absolute magnitude. Continuing on, we have some more discussion as well as some review questions. The answers to the review questions are found here in red. Next, we have Apply, which has some activity pages for you to assign, and we have a quiz under Assess. In the back of Part 2 of your Teacher's Edition, after your glossary, you will have the rest of the instructional aids for these chapters, as well as answer keys after those. You will also find your materials list for chapters 9 through 15. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is the Teacher's Edition Companion. This is specifically made for busy homeschool families. It gives an at-a-glance look at each of the lessons for the day, and this is a great resource to have to go along with your Teacher's Edition. The Teacher Edition Companion includes all of the lessons for chapters 1 through 15 in one book. As in the regular teacher edition, you will also have a lesson plan overview for each lesson. This will give you the lesson number, the teacher and student edition page number, the activities manual page numbers, as well as the objectives for each lesson. Each lesson is condensed down to one page. You will have your teacher edition and student pages needed at the top, as well as your activity pages. Here we have that your students will be reading pages 180 through 184 for lesson 70. Next, we have a few reading check questions for you to go over with your student. We have objectives, biblical worldview shaping, resources needed, and what the assignment is for the day. There is a smaller version of the student edition pages, activity pages, and any instructional aids needed for the lesson. However, these are not big enough to be able to read from, but they will give you a quick look at what your student will need. Sometimes as homeschoolers, we are looking for different ways that we can get out and socialize and be able to do things with others. In the back of the teacher companion, we have some collaboration ideas that you can use to help you there. Some of the games and activities in the teacher edition may be meant for a larger group of kids. Here, underneath the one-on-one activities and games, you can use these ideas to replace those that you would need with a larger group. Next, we have our student activity manual. Your activity manual will come 3-hole punched. I love this feature. I take all of my paperwork and I put them into binders for my kids, so this is a great feature. Let's take a look at the activity pages for lesson 70. At the bottom of our activity page, we have the lesson that it corresponds to, as well as the chapter, and the pages in the student activity manual. For these activity pages, we have some matching, some mapping skill with multiple choice answers, and some short essay questions. Here, for lesson 127, we have pinhole constellations, where your student will be making their very own constellation. The inquiry skills that they will be using are make and use models, observing, and recording data. We have the materials needed listed here, as well as their procedure. On the back, we have the data chart that they will be filling out, as well as their conclusions from the exploration. And now let's take a peek at the activity manual answer key. In your activities answer key, you will have the same view as your student activity manual with answers in red. For some of the explorations and activities, you will notice that it is still blank. These answers will depend on your student's findings. Now we are going to get into the student textbook. Your student text will have a table of contents at the beginning, along with the chapter and subject, and any explorations, STEM careers they will study, or investigations that they will do. At the beginning of each section, there will be a label with the lesson that it corresponds with, as well as the essential question. Here, we have why do water buffaloes let frogs ride on them? And we will be learning about relationships and behaviors. Vocabulary for the section is listed to the right. Here we have some review questions. The answers to these questions can be found in your teacher's edition. In the back of the student text, they will have their own glossary. They will also have an index of subjects. And last, we have the assessments and the assessment answer key. To keep the integrity of these assessments, I am not going to show you the insides. However, in the assessment packet, you will have all of the quizzes and assessments for your student, as well as rubrics for some of the different activities. Thanks for joining me to take a look inside of Science 5. I think you're going to have a great time with this course, as well as your student. Happy learning.